Hello and welcome to planning a Christmas theme for December 2024. As usual, we're starting off with the items that I pulled out to use for this theme. They don't all get used. I just take out anything I think might work so that way I have options. I wanted a classic Christmas theme this year that's still different to what I did last year. I was especially inspired by the plaid red scrapbooking paper to go with the gold Kuretake Gansai paints that I have. I also knew I wanted to use the red more minimally and focus more on the green and gold, so I decided to add in some greenery for, a more natural vibe. I also loved the gold musical washi sheet. I thought it would be perfect for bringing the feeling of Christmas carols. I actually only ended up using the red plaid paper from the large scrapbooking papers that you saw, and I also added one of the small sheets of pattern paper too. Some of the others you might recognise though from my advent calendar video, so if you haven't seen that, I'll have it linked in the description if you're in the mood for some more Christmas vibes after this video is done. Starting off with the cover spread, I allowed myself a lot of space for this because Christmas is my favourite time of year and I wanted it to be beautiful. I began with the letter D. I knew as soon as I settled on this theme that I wanted it to be gold to really stand out and make a statement. I had two gold options to use and I decided to go with the bluish gold Kuretake colour because it gave more of like an antique feeling. I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do to go with it, so I just sketched out some candles and greenery. Also, I'm adding less water to the paint here, well, with all of the paint, to get a nice thick and creamy and opaque colour. It just makes me so happy seeing the gold sheen everywhere. I'm using Microns in the sizes 005 and I think I use 003 for all the line work in this setup. I wanted very delicate and light lines, so using a thin pen and breaking up the lines themselves with dashes and dots is a great way to achieve this look. So I'm just using my Micron to outline all the greenery and the candles and stuff. I kept the cover very simple, well, simple for me, with a limited colour palette and simple designs. That being said, even though I kept the colours limited, I used quite a few different greens within all the leaves to give some depth to them, which you'll see coming up in a little bit. Also, the leaves and branches and candles didn't have a specific reference, I just sort of used my brain to come up with things similar to what I've drawn in the past. For colouring in the greenery, I used a combination of markers, mostly Tombow dual brush pens, as well as one I got from Journal, I think it's like a cream colour highlighter, as well as my Faber Castelle Polychromos coloured pencils, which are my fave coloured pencils of all time. They're so soft and creamy and they blend so beautifully. And then in a little bit for the candlestick, I also used the same bluish gold paint that I used for the letter D, as well as using some markers and pencils in greys and browns for the candles themselves, just to add some depth and shadow, but also keeping them, mostly white. And then for the candle that's sitting on the round disc, I felt like the round disc should be a slice of wood, so I added in some lines and texture with my Micron to convey that effect. And here I'm just adding in some brown for the branch. I think this is the only branch I actually drew for this theme, honestly, but I I can't remember because of who I am as a person. Oh, and here I'm cutting the top of the page on the right so that you can see some of the decorations that I have on the next spread, which is the calendar spread. Originally, when I planned this theme, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to add, other than the leaves and the candles, but it really did feel like I needed something more. So I tried drawing a door that was decorated with a wreath and lights, but that didn't feel right. So in the end I decided to draw a reindeer. I actually do 2 reindeer throughout this setup. They're always a big part of my decorating at this time of year, so using a reference photo, I sketched out a deer, which I actually really liked. The placement felt good and I really liked the sketch, but the antlers for the deer came up into the section that I planned to cut out. So I toyed with the idea of cutting it the same as usual and the majority of the antlers would be cut off, but that didn't feel right. And then I thought about redrawing it and changing the placement of the deer so I could still cut out that panel and not compromise the deer, but I really liked where the deer was sitting on the page and I knew that redrawing it just wouldn't end up as good. So with saying all of that, in the end I decided to just cut around the antlers. It meant you could see the back of them from the cover page, but honestly, even though it does annoy me a little, I think it was worth the compromise. Maybe one of these days I might actually plan out a theme that isn't flawed in the design stage. Now I'm working on these little collars for the candles. The first one's red to keep with the red plaid paper, so I started using a lighter pinky red for that as a base, and then I went in with darker reds for dimension. And then for the other one, I did it in a brown. I wanted a kind of like a hessian or a burlap feel to go with the rustic wood. So I used a variety of browns, and I also added some texture with lines and cross-hatching. It did end up getting a bit darker than I wanted, so I went in with my eraser and used it to lighten up some sections. I did this a few times with this theme actually, especially with the 2 deer that you'll see coming up. Moving on now to the calendar spread. The main way that I used this scrapbooking paper in this theme was by using a corner punch to make the corners look all pretty, and then using it either as an element on its own or layered with other things. I just really love what this paper added to the theme. And now I'm just using my Micron to line the deer ready for colouring, as well as drawing the boxes for the calendar and the letters for the days of the week. Apparently, I also used a size 01 micron for some of the thicker lines, which I totally forgot about. My bad. Flipping back to the cover page, I'm getting more of the leaves done. I do this quite a lot in general, but also with this particular setup. My ADHD has me all over the place, so the way that I work is not always linear. For the calendar spread, there wasn't much, or if any, gold going on, so I decided to add some in by using my gold paint to create the circles to write the dates in. It's pretty simple, but I think it's elegant and I love how it brought it all together. I'm using more gold paint to add merry and bright on top of the plaid paper, just painting it on top of some of my journal cut-offs. I actually had to paint Merry and Bright twice, because the first time I did it, it sucked. Usually I do leave mistakes like that in the video, but honestly this video was already way longer than I wanted it to be, and I had so much trouble editing the video, because the whole setup took me ages to do. It always does when I draw a lot by hand, but I wanted to still show you as much of the process as possible, you know? But that being said, there's also only so much colouring in of leaves that you can handle in one video, so I did end up being able to cut a lot of footage out. So now I'm starting the process of colouring the deer. This took me quite a while actually. It's one of the longest parts of the whole setup other than, you know, all the leaves. Seriously, why did I do that to myself? I was using a photo reference for the colouring, not exactly the same one as I used for the sketch, but a similar one. And I was using it as more of a guide, so I was getting the fur pattern and colouring somewhat right, but I didn't follow it exactly. Again, I used a mix of markers and coloured pencils here, starting with the lightest colours and building up to the darkest colours. I used browns as well as some more red-based tones and some white pencil to smooth some areas out and make the sections that I left white feel more finished. I also finished up with some white gel pen to make the shines in the eyes. Also, I did have to speed the footage up quite a lot to be able to show you the process without the video being 17 hours long, so you might have missed it, but I had to use my eraser again here to soften and lighten some of the areas of the deer that were too dark. Going in with my white gel pen here to add some little dot highlights to the leaves. This isn't really a necessary step, but I personally really love how it looks, and it's something that I do in my art often. I also added white gel pen to the wood slice and some other things as well. The white gel pen on the wood especially was a bit brighter than I would have liked. So what I did was I went over it lightly with the brown colour just to soften the harshness of the white a little bit. Moving on to the next spread, I'm now working on self-care and sleep. I kept it pretty simple on self-care, using patterned paper for little nameplates and adding some more candles and leaves. And I'm doing the same thing for the sleep tracker pretty much, but just using the patterned paper for more of a decorative feel, as well as using a simple script font that I found online for that swirly, magical, Christmassy feeling. I also only have 4 trackers this month because honestly it's such a busy time of year, and so I'm just trying to sort of keep my load to a minimum. I don't want to overload myself with too much, so this month we're just tracking 4 simple things, and January we'll be back to doing my trackers as usual. Back to my non-linear way of doing things. The cover page didn't really feel finished to me. It felt like there was too much open space, which, listen, a lot of people prefer it that way, and that's totally cool, but I am a maximalist, so I needed to add some more to make it feel like it was done. If you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that my style tends to be pretty experimental. I just sort of try a lot of things until I get the "this is done" feeling. I ended up framing the letter D, and the leaves with some textured white paper and some gold musical note washi paper. I really love using a white paper in my journal in a creamier tone or a different shade than the notebook paper. It doesn't add a lot of visual weight, so it pairs really well with anything that you want to put with it, as well as adding texture, which is something that I personally really love to add to my journal. While the washi paper brings a touch of elegance and makes it feel more Christmassy. Well, to me at least. Listen, I added these little strips of the red plaid scrapbooking paper, but they don't line up properly, and by the time I realised, they were thoroughly stuck down and it was too late, and I'm still bitter about it. And finally, I add the last element to this cover spread, sparkles and dots. I used more gold paint for the magical sparkly feeling, and then I also decided to add in the pearly white paint that I have as well, the same brand, Kuretake Gansai, for some more dots in a lighter colour. While I love how it looks, I feel like I may have gone a little overboard with the sparkles and dots everywhere. Leave me a comment and let me know if you think I did too much, or if I did just enough. Also, we just went past it, but the leaves on, around the deer, they didn't feel like they matched the cover page. They were all just a bit too pale, so I just went in with a green Tombow to add some darker areas to the leaves. I'm just using some yellow and red pencils here to colour in the flames of the candles, and then I'm adding in a little bit of a dark purple that has a bit of a red base to it for the hottest part of the flame. Something that I noticed when coming back to this setup the next day, because I usually record over a few days, was that the Polychromos pencils, being so soft, they were transferring onto the other pages. So I went into my art cupboard and grabbed out this matte fixative spray. It's basically a setting spray for art. I use it mostly when I'm drawing with charcoal so it doesn't smudge, but the great thing is that it's a workable finish, so you can set what you're doing and then continue to draw on top with any medium. It's honestly one of the best things I've bought for my art in the last few years. I use it in my sketchbook, for coloured pencils, and for even regular lead pencils, as well as charcoal and things like that. Ready, set, and ta-da! This spread is ready to colour. As usual for my songs on repeat and things I'm into, the decorations will be pretty minimal since I'll be adding a lot over the course of the month, and that will help to make the spread feel full and busy. And once again, going in with some white gel pen highlights. It's so satisfying to look at when it's all done. And now moving on to the one new spread that I've added for December. This is a gift tracker. I like to have a place to keep track of everything I've bought, what's arrived, etc. so I can be really organised for Christmas. Honestly, I do use this mostly in November, so it could go into November or a spread of its own in between November and December, but I like it being a part of the December theme and matching in. And since I record these videos early so I can edit them and have them up before the month starts, I can still use the gift tracker in plenty of time. Anyway, it's a pretty simple layout. A column for the name of the person I'm purchasing for, a column to write down the item, and then 2 columns at the end, one for when the item has been ordered and one for when it's arrived. With my autoimmune disease making it difficult to be out for hours getting shopping done, I do a lot of my shopping online, so this is also an easy way to keep track of all the things that I have coming so that I can chase them up if I need to. I have no idea why I painted the candlestick gold. I meant to leave it white with a touch of colour like I did with all the other candles, but I didn't because of who I am as a person. Anyway, I go over it with the pearly paint that I also used for the sparkles to try and fix it, but I was pretty annoyed with myself. Also, I definitely went overboard with the sparkles on this spread. And we have arrived at the final spread for this video, December at a glance. To start with, I'm using a kneaded eraser to lighten the sketch, and then I'm going through and finishing the rest of the line work before I start colouring in my deer using the same method that I used on the calendar spread. Also, this is the last few pages of this journal, so to make it easier to use, I've put a couple of rolls of washi tape underneath it just to make it easier to work on the right side of the journal. This is actually one of my favourite spreads for this whole setup. It has a deer, which, awesome, but it's also where I use the frames that I showed at the start of the video. It felt really fitting to me because when I set this journal up, I also used frames, so I really liked the idea of having frames at the beginning and at the end of my journal. And if you haven't watched any of my journal setups before, this is my month at a glance, so this month it's December at a glance. This is basically my version of a memory keeping spread, because with ADHD, I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago, let alone 5 days ago, so it's a really great place for me to record big and small things that I'd otherwise forget. At some point, I'd actually really like to expand my memory keeping using photos and things like that, but that'll have to wait for another time. The frames! I thought it could be really fun to create a gallery wall using these frames, and each time I want to record a memory, it can go inside one of the frames. And at the end of December, I'll end up with a wall full of memories. Typically, I wouldn't limit myself this way, because it means I can only add a certain amount of memories, but I'm sacrificing a little bit of function for aesthetic here. I did leave a lot of the arranging part of the gallery wall in because I just couldn't find a good balance, and I thought it might be interesting to see the process. I wanted to use as much space as possible without compromising the decoration around it, so not too much blank space and as many frames as possible. I found a layout that I liked finally, and then I changed it again once I started gluing things down. I don't know why I'm like this. Luckily though, I was able to pick up and move the things that I'd stuck down so that I could make everything fit the way I wanted. And now I'm adding in final touches. A little bit more washi tape that I hated and then took away, some more red plaid paper and gold washi paper, some more gold paint for the pretty sparkles, and we are done. It's time now to look back over all the spreads for December 2024. If you enjoyed today's video, it would mean so much to me if you considered subscribing. And if you made it all the way to the end, leave me a Christmas tree emoji or a tree emoji in the comment section so I know you stayed for the whole video. With that being said, I know Christmas isn't for everyone. It can be a hard time for some don't like it, some don't celebrate it, but it is my favourite time of year and I really love getting to share a little bit of my Christmas spirit with each of you watching. I genuinely appreciate each of you for choosing to spend even a little bit of your time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed spending some time with me today while we set up for December 2024, and I also hope that no matter where you are or what time of year you might be watching this, that you are safe and happy, and I wish you all a bright and merry Christmas.